April 4th, 2025 is not just another day on the calendar. It marks a silent but powerful crossing, a moment that separates who we have been from who we are becoming. What you'll hear today may sound simple at first, but beneath the surface lies a quiet revolution. One that doesn't arrive with noise, but with spiritual consequence. On this day, Neptune exits Pisces, a sign it has not left since 1861. This isn't just a planetary shift, it's an irreversible turning point in human consciousness. Think about 1861, a world without internet, without modern electricity, where even the structure of human thought was different. For over 160 years, Neptune in Pisces has bathed humanity in emotional depth, illusions, dreams, empathy, and blurred boundaries. It softened us, helped us dissolve, made us feel everything, and sometimes too much. But now, that cycle is closing. Neptune enters Aries. And with it comes fire. Movement. Instinct. Boldness. A new frequency is rising, not one of drifting, but of decisive becoming. This energy will not just shift the skies, it will awaken something fierce and clear within your soul. Before we go further, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment the number 777 below. That number carries a powerful vibration and helps spread this message to others who are waking up with you. If someone comes to mind, share this with them, they may already be feeling this change without the words to describe it. Because what begins on April 4th, 2025, is more than astrology. It's a moment of remembering. Of stepping into the fire. Of waking up to who you were always meant to be. For over 160 years, humanity has been swimming through a vast, shapeless ocean. Since 1861, Neptune has been moving through Pisces, and in that time, we have been slowly immersed in a dream, one that blurred the edges of reality and melted the boundaries of the self. It was a season of surrender, of sensitivity, of deep longing for union with the divine. In many ways, it was beautiful. Empaths flourished. Intuition sharpened. Dreams expanded. But it was also a time when the truth became slippery. The mind often could not grasp what the spirit was feeling. And feelings themselves, though profound, often had no anchor. Pisces dissolved walls. It blurred timelines. It softened the hardness of intellect and made way for heart-led living. But it also brought confusion. People forgot where their energy ended and another's began. Many lost themselves in the tides of others' emotions, carrying grief that didn't belong to them, feeling anxiety that wasn't rooted in their own experience. Illusion came wrapped in divine symbolism. Projection masqueraded as prophecy. It was a fog that often felt sacred, but a fog nonetheless. Still, it was necessary. That long Neptunian era offered humanity a baptism. It baptized us in compassion, in mysticism, in the art of letting go. It taught us to float. To wait. To listen for the still, small voice. But just as tides rise and recede, the Piscean Ocean has reached its final shore. The dream is breaking. The fog is lifting. And something else, something urgent, something unmistakably alive, is stepping forward from the silence. Because now, Neptune has entered Aries. And with that entrance, the entire tone of spiritual evolution shifts. Where Pisces whispered, Aries shouts. Where Pisces invited you to dissolve, Aries demands that you ignite. This is not a continuation of the old dream in new colors, this is a rupture. A rebirth. Aries is the first breath, the spark before the flame. It doesn't ask you to understand, it demands that you move. Neptune's energy in Aries does not flow around obstacles. It sets them on fire. What was once only felt is now lived. What was once imagined must now be made real. The passive mystic becomes the spiritual warrior. The intuitive becomes the embodied. No longer are we asked to wait for signs, we are becoming the sign. The spiritual path now includes movement. Boldness. Risk. It includes the courage to say no, the will to begin, the sacredness of claiming space not only in thought, but in the world. This is the divine impulse waking up inside you. You may feel it already as a building pressure in your body, like a restlessness that refuses to be calmed. It's not anxiety. It's activation. It's the soul remembering that fire is not the opposite of peace, it is peace in motion. The dreams you once held close, the visions you kept in the safe quiet of your heart, are no longer content to be contained. They want out. They want air. They want form. This is the "let there be light" moment of your spiritual journey. As in the very first words of Genesis, light does not wait to be analyzed, it is spoken, and it is. That same force now pulses through your own command. What you say, you create. What you decide, you set into motion. There is a divine permission rising in your bones, and it is not asking whether you're ready, it is declaring that the time has come. And yet, this is not recklessness. This is not impulse in the ordinary human sense. Neptune still carries the wisdom of the soul's depth, it's just that now, it's moving through flame instead of water. What emerges in this era will not be emotion that drowns, but instinct that directs. Action, yes, but action aligned with spirit. Movement, yes, but movement born from knowing, not from fear. So you might find that you can no longer stay still in places where you once felt safe. You may begin to feel the heat of your own potential rising, uncontainable, unexplainable. The question is no longer, how do I feel, but what am I going to do with what I feel? And the longer you resist that impulse, the more pressure builds, because your soul knows what time it is, even if your calendar doesn't. This is the end of the age of passive dreaming. And the birth of divine doing. And this transformation, this ignition of divine impulse, will not begin in your mind. It will begin in your body. Long before your thoughts can make sense of it, your physical form will respond to the energy that is already here. You may have already felt it. That moment when you wake just before your alarm, not with dread, but with a strange stillness. A sense that something is about to arrive. You lie there with your eyes open in the dark, sensing a presence you can't explain. This is not coincidence. It is alignment. Your heart may beat faster than usual at random moments. Your breath may shift without a cause. There may be days when your body feels wired but your mind feels calm, or when a soft vibration hums beneath your skin. These are not symptoms of stress. You're not anxious. You're awakening. What you're experiencing is your soul tuning itself to a new frequency, one that your physical vessel is learning to hold. The energy of Aries, channeled through Neptune, is entering not just the skies, but your cells. It's a recalibration. A full-body preparation for the version of you that no longer hesitates, no longer hides, no longer waits for the perfect sign. Romans 13 verse 11 said it best, it is high time to awake out of sleep. And now, your body is waking up ahead of your mind, because the wisdom in your blood has always known how to respond to truth. And when this awakening reaches beyond the body, it begins to shift how you perceive others. The world no longer communicates in the same language. Where Neptune and Pisces once spoke through dreams, symbols, and inner whispers, Aries now speaks through movement. What used to come to you in the silence of meditation now comes to you in real time, through the presence of people, through the rhythm of interactions, through how energy moves in the physical world. A stranger's glance lingers a moment longer than expected, and something stirs in your gut. Someone speaks, but the hesitation in their voice tells you more than their words ever could. A pause in a conversation suddenly feels loaded with unspoken meaning. Even the way someone walks past you, avoids your eyes, or shifts their posture, none of it feels accidental anymore. That's because it isn't. Life is no longer just physical. It has become a dance of signals, gestures, vibrations. Divine communication is now embodied. It moves through micro-expressions, through tone, through silence. You begin to sense truth before it's ever spoken. You don't need people to explain themselves, you feel their intentions before they're even fully formed in their minds. This isn't magic. It's what happens when your spirit lives fully inside your body. When your intuition no longer floats somewhere above you, but anchors itself in your muscles, your eyes, your breath. You are now living in the realm where the spiritual has become physical. Where before you interpreted dreams to understand your path, now your steps reveal it to you. Where once you felt the future in visions, now you feel it in your spine when you walk into a room. Every movement becomes a message. Every hesitation becomes a sign. And you, the one who is awake, begin to see the choreography behind even the smallest encounters. This is the world Neptune in Aries is revealing, a world where embodiment is not a limitation, it is the language of the divine. There comes a moment when what once felt like a whisper from within becomes a fire you can no longer ignore. The quiet nudges you used to second-guess now surge through your chest with undeniable urgency. You feel it not as a thought, but as a pull, a gravitational force inside your own ribs. And this isn't anxiety. It isn't chaos. It is your spirit remembering that it was born not just to sense, but to move. This is what happens when intuition evolves into impulse, not reckless or reactive, but divine and directed. The realm of watery inner knowing, where you used to float and interpret and dream, has now caught flame. There's no more time to endlessly reflect. No more space to just wait for the right moment. The moment is now. What you once only sensed must now become what you do. That sharp clarity that arrives out of nowhere, that sudden knowing that doesn't explain itself, it's not confusion. It's your true self breaking through the fog that once kept you safe. You no longer need to meditate on it, analyze it, or compare it to someone else's opinion. You just know. And now, the invitation is not just to know, but to trust that knowing enough to act on it. Be still and know has its place. It brought you through the Neptunian waters. But this season is different. This is the era of move and trust. As James 2 verse 17 says, faith without works is dead. In other words, the vision you've carried, the intuition you've nourished, must now meet the world through action, or it will suffocate within you. And as this new fire rises within, something else begins to fall away. The weight you've carried, the pain that was never yours, the emotions that didn't originate in you, the energetic burdens of others you picked up out of love or obligation, they no longer belong to your field. There was a time when being an empath meant absorbing everything around you. You thought it was compassion. You thought it was your gift. And in many ways, it was. But now, that sensitivity becomes sovereignty. You are no longer required to carry the weight of the collective. The world's sorrow is not your identity. The grief you wore like a second skin was never meant to define you. In fact, that numbness you've recently felt, the sense that you care less, that you no longer feel everything as deeply as before, it isn't a loss. It's liberation. You are not becoming hard. You are becoming clear. What you're shedding is the noise. The fog of emotional entanglement. The constant merging with energies that were never yours to begin with. And what rises in its place is fire. Direct, instinctual, radiant fire. The kind that doesn't need to explain itself, only to burn with purpose. Neptune in Aries does not just inspire, it returns to you what is yours. It gives back your boundaries, your clarity, your agency. It restores the sacred flame that once flickered under the weight of emotional overload. It reminds you that you were never meant to dissolve entirely, you were meant to shine, to act, to express. And so as the fog recedes and your field clears, you begin to feel lighter. Not because the world has changed, but because you are no longer carrying what was never yours. The spiritual weight is lifting. And underneath it, you rediscover your own divine rhythm, one that no longer needs to match anyone else's suffering to feel valid. One that doesn't apologize for being bright, fast, direct, and deeply alive. There was a time when vision was enough. When writing your dreams down, sitting in stillness, waiting for signs, trusting the flow, that was the path. And in the era of Neptune in Pisces, it made sense. We were learning how to listen. How to soften. How to surrender control so that the divine could speak. But that season has passed. We've crossed a line, and on this side of it, manifestation is no longer about dreaming, it's about moving. The energy has shifted from contemplation to creation. From visualization to embodiment. The desires that once lived safely on paper now demand to be lived through your hands, your voice, your presence. You can no longer stay in the space of someday. The time for incubation has ended. This is the season of walking your vision into the world. A divine urgency is rising. It doesn't come from fear, but from alignment. It doesn't rush you, but it will not let you stay still. There's something in your chest now that refuses to quiet. A call that doesn't wait for the perfect plan, the right moment, or the reassurance of others. It simply says, begin. As Ecclesiastes 3 verse 1 reminds us, to everything there is a season, a time to plant, and a time to pluck up that which is planted. And this is the moment of plucking. Of harvest. Not just of receiving, but of actively gathering. Of taking steps. Of shaping reality with your own two hands, guided not by desperation, but by divine impulse. And here's the deeper truth, you are no longer waiting on the universe. Because the universe is no longer waiting on you. That waiting room you thought you were stuck in. It never had a door. You were free to move all along. The synchronicities you're noticing, the repeated numbers, the strange meetings, the feeling that something is building, they are not hints. They are summons. The signs are no longer soft suggestions. They are directives. Signals not from the outside world, but from your own soul. Because now, you are the signal. The moment you realize that divine timing is not something external, not something you catch, if you're patient enough, but something that activates through you, everything changes. You don't need more signs. You need to become the sign. Your movement is the message. Your decision is the alignment. Your courage is the timing. And once you begin to walk with this awareness, the entire atmosphere around you starts to respond. People look at you differently, not because you're trying to prove anything, but because your field has shifted from waiting to becoming. You don't chase synchronicity. You create it. Because now, you're not waiting for life to tell you what it wants from you. You are telling life what you were born to give. This is the great shift of Neptune in Aries, the return of sacred movement. Not movement born of fear, but of fullness. Not movement to escape, but movement to embody. To claim. To lead. To create what only you were born to bring into the world. And when you step into that, you'll realize something deeper than all the visions, all the prayers, all the waiting ever showed you, you are the divine timing you were waiting for all along. There comes a point in every awakening where the questions begin to fade, not because you found all the answers, but because you realize they're no longer needed. You've spent years, perhaps lifetimes, trying to figure it all out. Why do I feel this way? What does this mean? Where is this going? In the Piscean era, asking was sacred. Analysis helped you move through the fog. But as Neptune enters Aries, that fog clears. Suddenly, you don't need to know why, you simply know. The clarity arrives not through understanding, but through alignment. Your soul no longer seeks permission. It seeks expression. You begin walking away from things that once consumed you, roles, relationships, identities that felt safe but stifling. And you do it without explanation. Without grief. The need to justify yourself dissolves quietly, like a mist evaporating in the morning sun. Now, complexity is replaced by simplicity. Overthinking gives way to instinct. You stop asking, what do I think, and start feeling, what do I know in my body right now? And with that clarity comes a shift in how you connect. Words lose their primacy. Meaning lives between the lines, in a glance, a pause, a hesitation. What's unspoken grows louder than anything said aloud. You feel truth without translation. You sense alignment without needing proof. Because we're no longer speaking mind to mind, we are speaking spirit to spirit. There's no more space for performance, for surface-level presence. What's not real feels instantly heavy. What is real feels instantly alive. You find yourself choosing spaces, people, and conversations not by logic, but by resonance. You feel when something is right. You feel when it isn't. You don't explain it, you recognize it. This is the awakening, to trust what you feel more than what you've been taught to believe. To move with clarity. To speak the truth, even when no words are needed. There's a strange pressure building inside you, not dramatic, not explosive, but undeniable. The places that once comforted you now feel too small. The routines you used to lean on start to feel like cages. The emotional blankets you once wrapped yourself in begin to suffocate rather than soothe. And for a moment, you might wonder, am I breaking down? But no, you are breaking out. What you're feeling is not chaos. It's truth. Because in this new frequency, false comforts cannot survive. The safety nets you built during the Piscean era, habits, identities, patterns of thought that once helped you cope, are now unraveling. Not because they were wrong, but because they were temporary. You've outgrown them. And now, they itch against your skin like old clothing that no longer fits your expanding form. This discomfort is sacred. It is the labor pain before birth. It is the friction that forces truth to the surface. Like the Israelites leaving Egypt, you are not being called into ease, you are being called into liberation. And liberation never feels like luxury in the beginning. It feels like loss. Like uncertainty. Like standing at the edge of the unknown and realizing that going back is no longer an option. But that is where power lies, in the moment you decide that freedom is more valuable than familiarity. And freedom, now, isn't just an internal state. It wants to live in your outer world. Because Neptune in Aries doesn't just ask for spiritual awakening, it demands material alignment. The energy doesn't stay in the ether. It moves through your decisions, your relationships, your finances, your career. It asks you to look around at the life you've built and ask, is this true for who I am now? Or is this just what I built to survive who I used to be? This is not the time to burn it all down in impulse, but it is the time to begin building what's real. Fire without focus will consume. But fire with form, it builds empires. And that's what you're being asked to do now, not to react, but to create with conscious intensity. Be bold, yes. But be strategic. This is not the recklessness of youth, it's the precision of spirit moving through matter. As Proverbs 21 verse 5 reminds us, the plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance. And in this season, diligence is not just about effort, it's about intuitive alignment. Planning not from fear of failure, but from clarity of purpose. You are now being asked to act, not because the world is pressuring you, but because your soul is ready to manifest in form what it has carried in spirit for far too long. Your inner fire is not here just to keep you warm. It's here to build, to shape, to change the landscape of your life. So if the old comforts feel like they're collapsing, let them. If the spaces you once loved now feel like prisons, honor that. If the call to act is louder than the call to wait, listen. You're not abandoning peace. You're embodying it. And sometimes, peace looks like action. There comes a moment when your fear no longer gets to lead. Not because it disappeared, but because it no longer defines you. The fear of judgment, the fear of rejection, the fear of getting it wrong, these belong to the Piscean fog, where identity was fluid and selfhood was constantly dissolving in the mirror of others. But that era has passed. And what rises now is spiritual courage. This is not the absence of fear. It is the presence of awakened fire. You move now not because you feel safe, but because you feel called. You step forward not because you're sure the path will be easy, but because something within you refuses to stay behind. You're not waiting for full certainty anymore, you're listening to that deep, unshakable voice that says, even if the waters haven't parted, take the step. Like Joshua at the edge of the Jordan, you walk not on what is visible, but on what is promised. You trust the fire more than the fog. You trust your soul more than your fear. And this is where the final threshold emerges. You no longer just know your truth, you begin to live it. What was once a quiet whisper in your chest becomes the very rhythm of your body. The alignment is no longer conceptual, it's cellular. This is not escape into the spiritual, this is embodiment of it. Your soul has spoken, and now your steps, your voice, your choices begin to reflect that knowing without apology. You're no longer dancing between who you were and who you might become. You've crossed over. This is not theory. This is not performance. This is integration. As 2 Timothy 1 verse 7 reminds us, for God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power. And that power is not something you're waiting to earn. It's already inside you, being activated by the very energy Neptune has brought into motion. Aries doesn't wait for permission. And neither does the awakened soul. It builds. It burns away what no longer serves. And then, it becomes. So if you've made it this far, if your chest has been stirring, if your eyes have been opening before the alarm, if your spirit has been whispering, something is changing, then understand this, you are not imagining it. This isn't subtle anymore. It's a spiritual turning point disguised as an astrological transit. But it's not just in the stars. It's in your bones. It's in your choices. It's in your breath. Neptune leaving Pisces is not just a shift in the heavens, it's a rebirth of who you are on Earth. You are not crossing a timeline. You are crossing a threshold of identity. The masks have fallen. The roles have expired. And what remains now is the raw, real, radiant version of you that was buried beneath the fog. That version doesn't just dream. It moves. It speaks. It acts. This is not just a transition. It is a call. A call to embody. To create. To claim the space your soul has long waited to fill. And if you felt the stirrings, the signals, the pull to something you couldn't name, this is it. The confirmation. The moment your soul has rehearsed for across lifetimes. So if this resonates with you, let it be known, share this message. Leave a 777 in the comments to signal your readiness. Not for me. Not for others. But for yourself. For your path. For those silently walking beside you through this awakening. This is not the end of your story. This is the beginning, the first real chapter of the life your spirit has been waiting to live. Now, begin.